It's 6:22. We start our service at 7 o'clock. Probably nobody's watching yet, but I am testing the video, testing the sound system. Everything seems to be okay. I'll be back at 7 o'clock. Mark. Glad you could see us. We didn't have the sound on yet because we were just talking. So send me another text and let me know if you can hear me now. Keep in mind we have a 7-second delay. So I'd like to hear from you and let me know if you can hear us. I assume you can. In fact, I'll check the mic right now.
I just turned my cell phone only now.
Okay. Say something.
Hello, hello. Shana Tova, everybody.
Shana
welcome.
Tova.
What a joy to welcome the new year with all of you.
So our president, okay, he can hear me now, is not here tonight because I'm doing his daughter's wedding next weekend up in Bar Harbor, and he doesn't want to take the chance that you took. He doesn't want to get COVID ahead of his daughter's wedding. So the weekend that I did your wedding, I did another wedding and a bar mitzvah, very, very busy weekend, and I had to call them all up and tell them I got COVID. It wasn't the best. But like you, everybody, there wasn't a single problem with all of the people. Well, I hope this comes out okay. Neither one of us has ever led services before on high holidays. So
Together.
This is together. Oh, that's right, together.
You've never led services before?
It's my first time. First time this year, that's right. This is my 36th year here in this show.
I can't beat that.
Yeah, it's true.
But I'm glad to be here with you.
I'm sorry? Double chai, that's right, double chai. I thought you said devil chai. I don't know what that. Yeah. Everybody feel comfortable and safe? Let me ask a question. Did everybody see the sign-up sheet downstairs? Okay. Just in case we have a problem, which I don't expect we will, we'll be in touch with everybody and let you know.
And welcome to those of you who are at home. My father is probably watching from Argentina, so that's another nice thing about doing the streaming.
Very nice. My father is watching from heaven. I hope.
A more direct line.
Yes, yes. All right. My brother just texted me. He can hear me from Texas. Okay. So it looks like our sound is okay. I have 1 minute before 7, so we'll begin in just a moment. Well, let me take a minute while we're waiting for 7 o'clock to come. And first of all, extend my welcome and my greetings to all of you. We're delighted to be back here in this synagogue. We haven't been here now for 2 years. Many of you, this is the first time you've been in here for 2 years. You've never seen the clouds that we had restored and all of the things that we did to make this synagogue look like it used to before. Tonight's service is a short service anyway, and so it will be such as we normally do here. I want to remind you what I think that our job is. When I say our job, I'm saying myself and Cantor, Nesis. Anybody can come to the synagogue and sit there. And what I don't want to happen is for you to come and sit in the chair and wait for the time to pass so you can go home. You might as well just stay home. I want to do everything I can to make this a meaningful experience for all of you. And so that's always been my goal. How do we make it meaningful? Well, one of the ways we make it meaningful is that we invite you to this beautiful building. And many of you have told me that you remember sitting in a synagogue much like this one with parents or grandparents or spouses or family members, and it brings you back to that time. And that's great. That's a very special feeling. Nancy Davidson will tell you that we, in the summertime, greet visitors from all over the world, and they come in here and they look around and they say to me and to her, wow, I feel something special here. I feel something different in this sanctuary. So that's another way that we can make this meaningful for you. A third way is that most of our prayers are in Hebrew. We do some English, of course. I invite you to look through this Machzor. It has a lot of really good readings in here in English. And don't feel that you need to stick to where we are, even though we'll be announcing pages. Explore on your own, and you might find some very meaningful things for you. And last but not least, as I mentioned before, our job is to bring you back to the time of sitting here when you were younger, and it may be a happier time, and we do that through music. I've tried to do it through music by using tunes that a lot of you are familiar with, but tonight I am more than excited to be joined here on the bima by Cantor Sheila Nesis, and she will use many old tunes that most of you know, and she has some beautiful new melodies, and I hope you all get in the spirit like I know you will, because it really moves me, and I'm hoping that it will move you as well. So I think now that it is 7 o'clock. There's no football on. You don't have to rush out, right? Okay. I'm going to ask you to turn to page. We're going to start with a nigun.
So I invite you to join if you'd like. We will begin with a nigun that is in the theme of the mode of the High Holidays melodies that we will be hearing. I'll do it tonight and maybe a few other times throughout the High Holidays. Please join if you'd like as a nigun. There are no words, it's just a light, and I hope that that will allow you to have a sense of community, that we're here, that we're coming together to do the work that we need to do to renew ourselves for this coming year. And now on page 9, I invite you to sing with me on the top of the page. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkanotecha Israel. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkanotecha
turn now to page 11. I'd like to read responsively with you in the English as we greet the new year. Let me begin. Eternal God, as the new year begins, we have come together to pray as a congregation, yet each of us is strangely solitary in your presence.
Us comes before you with special hopes and dreams. Each of us has personal worries and concerns.
Each of us has a prayer no one else can utter. Each of us brings praise no one else can offer.
Each of us feels a joy no one else can share. Each of us has regrets which others cannot know.
And so we pray. If we are weary, give us strength. If we are discouraged, give us hope.
If we have forgotten how to pray, remind us. If we have been careless of time, forgive us.
If our hearts have been chilled by indifference, warm them with your mercy and inspire us with the glowing spirit of this holy night. I invite you to please turn to page 18 and rise for the Baruch Hu. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Eved. Please be seated.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בדברו מעריב ערבים, בחוכמה פותח שערים, ובתבונה משנה עתים ומחליף את הזמנים, ומסדרת את הכוכבים, במשמרותיהם ברקיע כרצונו. בורא יום בלילה גולל אור מפני חושך, וחושך מפני אור. ומעביר יום ומעביר לילה, ומבטיח ביום ובלילה. אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים, תמיד מלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, המערים הרבים.
Amen.
We continue on page 20. אהבת עולם בית ישראל, עמך אהבתה. תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו, בשוכבנו ובקומנו, נשיח בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו continue with the Ve'ahavta. We chant together the first paragraph and we'll continue with the reading on the next page, on page 24. First, on page 22, we begin together. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך לביקרתם בעם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
I invite you to continue reading silently on page 24 through the end of page 26.
ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. We continue on page 28. Somewhere in the middle of the page, actually towards the end of the page where you see the change in paragraphs, you can find the text of Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, who is like you, O God, who freed our ancestors, who gave them the courage to overcome obstacles. We pray, we hope we will have the strength and the courage to overcome our obstacles in our days, in our lives. מי כמוך באים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורת תהילות אוספת. מלכותך וקיים לפני משה זלינו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את וגלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני כאן אסתר page 30.
ברוך אתה אדוני, הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו, ועל כל עמו ישראל, ועל ירושלים.
When the Cantor chants, I can hear a pin drop in here. Last year when I was chanting, you could have gone bowling and you wouldn't have known the difference. I appreciate your attention. That was a version of Hashkivenu that we've never heard here before. It's a beautiful version. People ask me sometimes to sing Hashkivenu. I know one line. It's the one line that you all know. This version was beautiful. Thank you very much for bringing it to us. I want to ask you to learn to turn on page 31, and let's read this prayer responsively in the English. Help us to lie down in peace. Help us, O God, to lie down in peace and awaken us to life on the morrow.
May we always be guided by your good counsel and thus find shelter in your tent of peace.
Shield us, we pray, against our foes, against plague, destruction, and sorrow.
Strengthen us against the evil forces which abound on every side.
May we always sense your care, for you are our merciful sovereign.
Guard us always and everywhere. Bless us with life and peace.
Praise to you, O God of peace, whose love is always with us.
Who shelters your people Israel and protects Jerusalem in love. We continue now on page 34 with the Chatzi Kaddish. התגדל והתקדש שם רבה מרמן דברך חירותך וימליך מלכותך בחייכון ויומכון ובחיי בכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ומעלה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתעלה ויתעלה לשם וקודשה בריחו לעילא ולעילא מכל ברכתה ושירתה ושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמה ואמרו
be standing for the Amidah, which is found on page 36. It is a silent prayer. It goes until page 46. This is one of those opportunities that I mentioned at the start of the service. If you do not want to read the words that are in this particular prayer, look through the book and find some things that might speak to you, or just spend a few moments quiet reflection and meditation, and let's give some thought as to what this beginning of this holiday is all about. We are here for a purpose, and this is a good time to remember what that purpose is. So I invite you to stand if you're able, and don't overdo it if you're not. Please be seated when you're not comfortable, and we will do a silent Amidah.
Shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
You may be seated.
We continue now on page 50 with the Kaddish Shalem, speaking of new melodies that you might have heard this evening. This might also be a new melody to some of you. There are various Kaddish throughout the service, moments in which we're told something has just ended, something else is coming. We might also take that as an opportunity for ourselves to take that time in our lives to prepare for what has just for what is coming, to reflect on what has just ended. So this Kaddish Shalem goes like this. יתקצל ויתקדש הנר הבא בעלמא דברה חירותה וימלך מלכותה בחיי חול וביום אחרון ובחיי כל בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן יש מרבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמדק ודשבחו לעילא ולעילא מן ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן ועלמה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן ועלמה ויאמרו אמן תתקבל תלואתנו ואותן בכל בית ישראל קדם אבון די בשמיה די בשמיה ויאמרו אמן יש לה מרבה משמיה וחיים 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 עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן עשה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו
Amen. Some of you may recognize that if you've been to any services at Chabad. It's a favorite melody for the Chabad people. Their prayers, particularly for holidays, are filled with joy. And I think you probably felt the joy as the Cantor did that piece for us. So brings joy to me. Where are you going? You got a kiddush.
Oh, I have a kiddush. I was transitioning to your sermon. I sang that nice and big for you. Anyway, now I have the kiddush. It's still good. Page 56. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא פרי הגפן ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בחר בנו מכל עם ורוממנו מכל לשון וקידשנו במצוותיו ותיתן לנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה את יום הזיכרון הזה יום התרועה מקרא קודש זכר ליציאת מצרים כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים ונברך אמת וקיים לעד ברוך אתה אדוני מלך על כל הארץ מקדש ישראל ויום הזיכרון ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה לחיים, for life, for la vida.
Just want you to know this is authentic. This is the best Manischewitz wine that money can buy. Yes, so this was vintage August, yes. And I love Manischewitz wine, but I'm pre-diabetic. I can't drink it. It puts me in a coma. So on Erev Rosh Hashanah, I always speak fairly briefly, and tonight won't be any different from my normal routine. They surveyed rabbis across the United States to find out what would be their main topics for sermons this year, and overwhelmingly they came down with two different subjects. Anybody want to guess what they are? Israel, kind of, yes. And COVID was one. Israel and anti-Semitism is the other. No surprise. So you'll have to wait until Yom Kippur, and I'll tell you what I know about anti-Semitism. It might be a little different from the regular train of thought that most of us think, how we deal with anti-Semitism. But I do want to talk a little bit about COVID. You know, there's an expression, a Yiddish expression, and many of you know it. You certainly know the English expression. It goes, Der Mensch tracht und Gott lacht. Man makes plans and God smiles. So when I spoke to you on Erev Rosh Hashanah last year, we weren't able to meet here inside the synagogue because of COVID. The vaccine was in its clinical trials. No one was able to get that vaccine yet. We wouldn't be able to get it for another 4 months. Tens of thousands of Americans alone were contracting COVID every month, and many of those were dying. There was no treatment for COVID. We were all scared. But many of us were optimistic that one way or another we would find a way to address this pandemic before it changed our way of life forever. And we thought that this year, within a year, that we would be together again. Well, not quite. We are together, very limited, although I will tell you there's quite a few here tonight. We wouldn't have too many more than this if it were not for COVID. So I'm very pleased that you're here. The vaccine was released, of course, a few months after last year on Rosh Hashanah. And many of us, particularly older people, flocked to whatever facility had this vaccine to get our shot. They held a promise for us that we would be able to return to a life that was more normal than what we were living and pretty close to what we had before. But many people, particularly younger people, were hesitant. And they came up with excuses, a myriad of excuses. My son's favorite one was, well, Dad, I'm studying the science behind it. You know, I don't understand the science. My son barely got out of high school. What's he going to do with science? He's not going to understand it if I gave it to him. But it was the catchphrase that people said, the science isn't settled, they rushed it out too fast. Some other people said, I'm going to let someone else try it first, and maybe later on I'll see if I can get it if it's not harmful. Shortly after that, we realized that a lot more people had to get on board with the COVID vaccine if we were going to be able to return to our lives as it was before. Well, then the inevitable happened. Because there were so many people, not just here in the United States, but throughout the world, it was a fertile breeding ground for COVID, and the virus began to mutate. It spread faster and in greater numbers, and there were worries that the vaccine that we all had gotten was not going to be effective against these new variants. The first one that came out was the Delta variant. And now there's something that's called, I've heard it's pronounced mu or mu, whatever it is, it's MU. And that virus has just recently appeared. And as a matter of fact, the World Health Organization just classified it this past week as an official variant. So those of us who were fully vaccinated saw something happening that we hoped would not happen, and that is that there were breakthrough infections. And I know that very well, because despite having received not one shot, not two shots, but 3 full shots of vaccine, I was exposed by a close contact, a friend of mine in a social setting, and I got COVID. just a couple of weeks ago. I got it around the same time that Senator Angus King got it. And now Senator King was very, very concerned. He had some more severe symptoms than I had, and he had monoclonal antibodies, which I tried to get. But that's the problem with that particular treatment. That's the one that President Trump had in hospital, is you have to have it within 10 days of your infection or it's not effective. So try to get it here in Maine. There's so many people signed up that they said to me, we'll put you on a waiting list, but you probably won't get it, and they were right. I didn't get it. If my last name had been King, maybe I would have gotten it. I'm not sure. I was very happy that my symptoms were mild. I had a high temp. I had a headache for a while, a couple of days, and then I was feeling great. And then I wanted to come back to work. As Nancy Davidson will tell you, I showed up one afternoon. I thought no one was here. She was here. And so I had to go home, and I stayed home for 10 days till the end of my quarantine was over. So I hoped I wouldn't have to deal with this personally, but once again, man makes plans and God smiles. Well, I raised the topic of COVID tonight for a specific reason because I believe it's related to the high holidays. Maybe not in a way that you might imagine. Our Torah reading for this past week was the parsha called Nitzavim from the book of Deuteronomy. We always read this portion for the Shabbat that comes directly before Rosh Hashanah. And in this particular reading, Moses is telling the children of Israel, before they go into the promised land, all of the laws that they have learned over the last 40 years as they wandered through the desert. And he's telling them that they were going to make mistakes and that they were going to be straying from what they learned, but always remember to come back. But this particular subject has many of the very important ideals and principles of the Jewish faith. The one that I have in mind today is the unity of the nation of Israel. So Moses addressed them in the beginning of this reading, and he said to them in Hebrew, Atem nitzavim hayom kulchem lifnei Adonai Elohechem. You stand today, all of you, before the Lord your God, your tribes, the head of your tribes, your elders, your officers, every Israelite man, your young ones, your wives, the stranger in the gate, from your wood hewer to your water bearer. And he goes on to say that he's including not only those people who are listening to his voice, but all Jews who ever will be born are included in those words. It didn't matter if you were the head of a tribe or a single citizen. It didn't matter if you were a professional person or a manual laborer. We all stand together in front of God. We stood together in that moment before we entered the land of Israel, and we stand together here during this holiday, during Rosh Hashanah, asking God for a favorable outcome. Why do we get together and stand here? We could do it at home just as well. In normal times, most everybody tries to come to the synagogue, but we stand together. We stand together because we feel this power in the unity of the people. We also stand together because we are expected to do teshuvah. Teshuvah, many of you know, the name for teshuvah, or the translation for teshuvah, is repentance. It really doesn't mean repentance at all. It means to return. And in this case, we are returning to God. This is the opportunity for all of us to look at where we were last year as we stood before God. And where are we today? And what has happened in our lives? Teshuvah means that we can go back and say, look, I made some mistakes. I wish I hadn't done that. And I vow that I won't do them again. We're not allowed to do vows, but we do a vow without taking a vow. And I've told you every year that while that's well and good, I would prefer that we think about not the things that we did wrong, but the things that we did well. Because that's why we're here. We're here to serve each other. We ask for forgiveness as a nation, not just for ourselves, but for all of the people in in our collective congregations. Tomorrow we will listen to the Cantor lead us in Avinu Malkeinu. I think she does better than Barbara Streisand, but you'll have to find out yourself. But we stand together, all of us, for a single purpose, because we are one nation and one people. But now here comes the COVID part. Beyond one nation of Israel, we are one world. And nowhere is that more evident than in the arena of public health. With COVID in particular, we can't walk the streets in Maine and think that we can escape the health problems in other part of the world and think that they won't affect us. They will, and they do, and they have. Now, it's thought that COVID originated in Wuhan City, China, and it spread from there. The Delta variant was first detected in India. It's roughly twice as infectious as the original strain, and 60% more transmissible than the Alpha strain. And that was first identified in Great Britain. And now we're beginning to deal with the Mu variant that was just announced. That was detected in Colombia in January, but we're just hearing about it now. So from a health standpoint, it really is all just one world. And it might seem hopeless, but it's not. There's a way to beat this. And that way is reflected in Moses' remarks to the people in the Torah reading of Nitzavim. Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kulchem Lifnei Adonai. We all stand here today together before God as one people. We have to act as one people. So unless there is a medical reason, everyone should be vaccinated against COVID now. We can't afford to wait until tomorrow to see what happens. Lives are ruined and lives are lost every single day that we delay. I don't pretend that this is easy, and some understand better than others. My grandson just turned 12 last month. He got his shot the day after he turned 12. He couldn't wait to do his part to help his family and to help his community. My son, who is 22, has yet to see the wisdom of getting a vaccine. As much as I've tried to convince him, he's still waiting for the science. But this is a mindset that can be defeated. Most of you here, all of you here, can remember the Salk vaccine for polio. It was developed shortly after I was born, and I remember lining up in school with all of the children, not some of the children, all of the children to receive that vaccine. It was saving lives around the world, and everybody wanted to get it. When was the last time anybody here heard of someone contracting polio? Exactly. Why are people today refusing to behave in that same responsible manner? I think I'm probably preaching to the choir, but I urge all of you, if you haven't already gotten your second shot, as soon as possible, go out and get it done. And I also ask that you use your influence in any way you can to convince other loved ones to get vaccinated as well. We all want to return to a life as close as possible as to the one we left behind 16 months ago. That's not going to happen until we extend the umbrella of vaccination to everybody. In China, in Great Britain, in India, in Colombia, in Israel, where I want to go in 2 months, in Argentina, in the United States, we all are really one people. Let's act like one, and let's be responsible to each other. I want to be able to greet all of you back here next year in this beautiful synagogue to celebrate the new year, which will then be 5,783. And in the meantime, Shana Tova U'Metuka, may you have a healthy, happy, and sweet new year 5,782.
We'll continue now with Aleinu on page 58. If you are able, please rise. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל מונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוצר הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בכובע מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום וידעת היום והשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא אלוהים השמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. ונאמר היה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Please be seated. In a moment we will be saying the Mourner's Kaddish, but before we do that, I'd like to ask you to turn to page 67. We have a very special penitential prayer that we say from the beginning of the month of Elul last month until after Simchas Torah. And on page 67, let's please read this responsively, and I will begin with the first two lines. The Lord is my light and my help. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Whom shall I dread?
Enemy be arrayed against me, I would not fear. Should war beset me, still would I be confident.
One thing I ask of the Lord, for this do I yearn, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all my life, to feel the goodness of the Lord in the Lord's sanctuary.
On the day of trouble, God will shield me, lifting me to safety. My head will be high above my foes.
In God's tabernacle I will bring offerings of jubilation with chanting and joyous singing.
O Lord, hear my voice when I call. Be gracious to me and answer me.
O Lord, I truly seek you. Do not hide yourself from me. Turn not in anger from your servant.
You have always been my help. Do not forsake me, O God, my deliverer.
Teach me your way, O Lord. Lead me on the straight path. Deliver me not to the will of my enemies.
Trust in the Lord and be strong. Take courage and hope in the Lord.
And now we turn back to page 64 for the Mourner's Kaddish. You know, many people in our congregation only say Mourner's Kaddish when it's the anniversary of the death of a loved one, or the 4 times of year, which are holidays, when we recite the Yizkor service, which would be Passover, Shavuot, Sukkot, and Yom Kippur. But others will join in a community Mourner's Kaddish, and I like to do that here. We began that many years ago. So if your custom allows, please join with me on page 64 as we recite together the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitzkadal v'yitzkadash shemei Rabbi v'yalma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei B'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kari v'himeru amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevorach leolam olomei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpoar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudisha b'richu leila leila minikol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechamata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlomo Rabba min shemaya v'chaim oleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'im ramav, hu yaseh shalom, oleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimeru, amen. Please be seated, and we will conclude in just a moment with singing Yigdal, the regular way we sing Yigdal, not the way we will do it next week, which is for Yom Kippur. A couple of quick announcements. Once again, we want to wish you all a very happy, healthy, and sweet new year. And it's our custom here to have apples and honey, but we don't want to put anybody at risk. As you leave the building, you'll see a table with the little bags in it. The bag has honey. It has little individual packages of apple and some sweets for you to have a sweet year. I want to thank my wife for putting them all up by herself. And I want to tell you about the power of Amazon. I thought about this last night at 9 o'clock, and I said, how are we going to get honey? So we ordered Amazon honey, but with my Prime account, it got to my house delivered at 2 this afternoon. How do they do that? That's amazing. So anyways, that's there for you. I want to also announce for I don't know how many years, 15 years in a row, the flowers on the bima and on the back table have been provided courtesy of Steve Bryn and Jody Sadloff. They do it every year. I want to thank them for that. Many of you noticed behind me we have a new parochet, a new cover for the ark that was donated by Amy and by Marshall in memory of their parents. And not to be outdone, it looked so nice. This was a bare table, so Cindy and I donated this in memory of our parents. So all of this had to happen because of the fire we had here over the past year, and I think we've bounced back better than new. Finally, tomorrow morning we begin at 10 o'clock, and we will likely finish around 12 o'clock. We flew in a person to blow the shofar, to sound the shofar, from Virginia Beach, and it is here. My friend Stan Tickton and his wife Carol, they come up just to blow the shofar. He's leaving the next day. So we have loyal people who come here to Eitz Chaim, and he came by accident one year during Rosh Hashanah. He happened to have, I guess he carries around his shofar with him, and he said to me, would you like me to sound the shofar? You know, I looked at him and I said, Mezav, oi, yeah, okay. All right, so I'll invite him up and let him blow the shofar. He blew me away. He did a great job. So I've invited him back, and he's accepted the invitation. I'm looking forward to hearing him. We will only blow 9 notes inside the sanctuary tomorrow, again, to keep down the risk of any kind of transmission. But we will sound the entire liturgy of notes outside, beginning at 12, right after services at 12 o'clock. After that, we will walk from here down to the ocean for Tashlich service around 12:30, and then you'll go home and take a nap. And so that's I guess, all the announcements I have. Marshall, did I forget something? So the parking is likely going to be taken up by the main medical partners. We have our president, Mark Berenson, went down to City Hall, informed the parking division that we will be parking on the street, and so that they would please not ticket anybody in the vicinity of the synagogue. They've done that every year for us, and this year they'll do it again. If you get a ticket, parking while you're here at a service, bring it into me. We will bring it down to them, and they will invalidate it. So we're happy to have good neighbors. That's it. We have, every year during Yom Kippur, we have a very special break fast, and our break fast this year was provided by Andy Brenner, except for we're probably, and Linda, I'm sorry, of course. She's not here, but you are. And Linda, of course. And we probably will not have it unless something changes between now and Yom Kippur. We thank you in advance. We'll use it for another Kiddush another time, and we will give you covered for that as well, okay? All right. Now, since I've stopped talking, we turn to page 68. Oh, one more thing. I got a couple of messages. Where are the words? We can't manage this transmission over the air and the sound and everything else and also do the words. We don't have a technical engineer to do that. If you are home and you'd like to get one of these machzarim, you let me know. Send me an email or a text or something. I'll see that you get one. And it may not have it tomorrow morning, but by the next day you'll have it, and you'll have it for Yom Kippur. We want to make sure everyone has what they want. And if you tune in and you don't have a book, you can use any other prayer book or just listen, and we hope that you'll find. Can I send a PDF? It's very difficult. So you brought up something. I want to say that Cantor and I have been working all summer to put together a service that's meaningful for you, and we had the full service, the entire service all ready to go, and then we had to back off, and then we were going to do all of it on YouTube, and then we had to come back and say we'll do part of it on a hybrid service. So we worked hard to come up with different ways, and if I send out a PDF, first of all, it's very large, and second of all, it's unmanageable. So I'll give you one of these beautiful books. Okay? Ready for Yigdal?
I'm ready to
Okay,
follow
listen
your
to
lead.
me. Okay, here we go. Page 68. Yigdal Elohim chai ve'yishtabach nimtzo v'yenei el metziuso echad ve'en yachid ke'yichudo ne'lam v'gam achduso ein lo demusaguf ve'yeno guf lo naroch elav kedushaso Kadmon lechol davar asher nivra rishon v'en reshit lereshiso hino adon olam v'chol notzor yoreh gedulato umalchuto shefa nevuato netono el anshe segulato v'tifarto lo kam beYisrael kemo she'od navi umabit et emunato Torat emet natan le'amoel al yad nevio neman beito lo yachal lifoel ve'lo yamir dato le'olamim lezulato sofer ve'yodea setarenu mabit lesof tovor v'kadmoto Gomer leish chesed kemifalo noten lerashara kerishato yishlach leketz yamim meshichenu liftot mechakeketz yeshuato meitim yechayel berov chasto baruch adei shem tehilato Meitim Yechayel Kerov Chasto Baruch Adeyat Shem Tehilato. That's it. Good yontif to everybody. Shana Tova Matuka. If you have not signed the contact sheet downstairs, please sign it on your way out. I don't expect we'll have an issue. But if we find an active case of COVID, we want to make sure that we let everybody know who was here tonight. Thank you very much. It was wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you.
Yes.
Awesome. So wonderful. Thank you.